Welcome! Tonight, we are going to embark on a journey across a land of quiet wonders and immense, stretching horizons. We are turning our gaze toward the north, exploring the vast and peaceful landscapes of Canada. It is a place where the air feels a little crisper, the stars seem a little brighter, and the silence is as deep as the ancient forests that blanket the earth. Before we begin our journey through the science and the beauty of this great white north, I invite you to settle in. Take a moment to adjust your pillows until they feel just right against your head and neck. Pull your covers up, feeling the gentle weight of the blanket grounding you to your bed. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Take a slow, deep breath in and let it out. Imagine that breath as a cool mist, clearing your mind of the day's clutter. There is something deeply restorative about northern geography, the way the rugged rocks and still waters seem to hold a peace that has existed for eons. Here, there is no rush. There is only the slow, steady pulse of the natural world. If these stories of science and nature help you find your way to a restful sleep, please consider subscribing to join us for more of these quiet journeys. And if you find a sense of peace here tonight, a gentle, like on the video, helps this channel reach others who are also searching for their rest. But for now, simply let my voice be a guide. There is nothing you need to do, no problems to solve, and nowhere else you need to be. Just listen and let yourself drift. Canada is a place defined by its incredible scale. It is a land of giants, giant mountains that touch the clouds, giant trees that have stood for centuries, and giant skies that dance with light. It is a country that breathes with the rhythmic cycle of the seasons, shifting from the deep emerald greens of the summer wilderness to the crystalline hushed whites of the winter snows. It is a place where you can travel for days and still be surrounded by the same untamed beauty, a sanctuary of space in a busy world. It is a landscape that invites the mind to wander, to expand, and finally, to rest. As you close your eyes, let the walls of your room begin to fade away. Imagine we are rising up, slowly and effortlessly, higher and higher, until the lights of the towns below become like tiny, distant embers. We are ascending until we can see the gentle curve of the earth against the velvet black of space. Below us, the deep blues of the Atlantic, Pacific, and Arctic oceans meet the rugged, intricate edges of a vast continent. Let your mind settle on the map, tracing the enormous northern expanse that we are about to explore together. We are hovering over a world of silver lakes and dark woods, beginning our descent into the quiet heart of the second largest country on earth. As we look down from this quiet, elevated vantage point, the sheer magnitude of the land begins to reveal itself. Canada is a place of almost incomprehensible scale, the second largest country on our planet. It stretches across nearly 10 million square kilometers, a number so large it feels like a vast open sea of land. To cross it is to journey through a world that seems to go on forever, a tapestry of ecosystems that transitions softly from one to the next, from the frozen tundra of the north to the lush, rain-soaked forests of the west. Because it is so wide, the country doesn't share a single rhythm of the sun. Instead, It breathes through 6 different time zones, each one a slow rolling wave of light and shadow. Imagine the very first rays of the morning sun touching the rugged, salt-sprayed cliffs of Newfoundland. The air there is crisp and cool as the day begins, the light catching the spray of the Atlantic. But as that sun rises in the east, the rest of the country is still tucked deep under a blanket of night. It takes hours, quiet hours, for that same light to travel across the dense forests of Quebec and Ontario, over the endless golden prairies, and past the towering snow-capped peaks of the Rockies. By the time the sun finally reaches the wild mountainous terrain of the Yukon in the far west, the people in the east are already halfway through their day. This staggered passage of time reminds us that the world is much larger than our immediate surroundings. It allows us to step outside our own clocks and enter a state of timelessness. Think of all that space, the millions of acres where no foot has stepped today, where the only sound is the wind through the needles of a pine tree or the soft lap of water against a hidden shore. This vastness isn't empty. It is full of a deep ancient peace. It is a room large enough for your mind to stretch out in, to let go of the day's small worries, and to simply wander. There is a profound comfort in knowing that such enormous, quiet places exist, undisturbed and steady. You can let your thoughts drift across these thousands of kilometers, floating over the hidden valleys and the silver ribbons of rivers, feeling lighter and more relaxed with every mile you travel in your mind. Now, let's bring our focus down from the high clouds. We will follow the curve of the land toward its very edges, where the solid earth finally meets the restless power of the sea. We are moving toward the boundaries of this great land where the story of the water begins and where the land begins its long, intricate conversation with the 3 oceans that cradle it. As we reach the edges of this vast land, we find ourselves standing before a boundary that seems to defy the imagination. Canada possesses the longest coastline of any nation on Earth. It is a jagged, winding, and beautiful border that stretches for over 202,000 kilometers. To visualize that distance is almost impossible. It is a line long enough to wrap around the entire circumference of the globe 5 times over. This coastline doesn't just face one horizon, it touches 3 distinct and powerful oceans, the Atlantic to the east, the Pacific to the west, and the frozen, mysterious Arctic to the north. Each of these shores has its own unique song, a rhythmic lullaby that has been playing for millions of years. On the Atlantic coast, the water is often energetic, crashing against granite cliffs and smoothing out ancient stones into perfect, rounded pebbles. You can almost smell the salt in the air, a clean and bracing scent that clears the mind. Here, the tides are a powerful pulse, dragging the sea back and forth in a constant, heavy breath. Then, if we travel across the continent to the Pacific, the mood shifts. Here, the coast is often shrouded in a soft, silver mist. The waves are long and rolling, moving through dense kelp forests and licking the edges of dark volcanic sands. It is a temperate world, where the transition between the deep green of the rainforest and the deep blue of the sea is blurred by the fog. It feels sheltered, humid, and ancient. And then there is the north. The Arctic coastline is a place of profound crystalline silence. For much of the year, the water here is still held in the quiet grip of ice. When it thaws, the water is a startlingly clear turquoise, so cold and pure that it feels like looking into another dimension. There are no crashing waves here, only the gentle lap of water against the permafrost and the occasional creak of shifting ice floes. It is perhaps the quietest place on Earth, a sanctuary of stillness where time seems to hold its breath. In the summer, the sun never sets on these northern shores, casting a long, golden glow over the water that lasts for hours and hours, turning the sea into a mirror of liquid light. If you were to set out on foot to walk this entire coastline, traveling at a steady pace every single day, you would walk for over half a century and still find new coves, new inlets, and new beaches to discover. You could spend a lifetime wandering these edges and never see the same vista twice. There is a deep comfort in that kind of abundance. The idea that the world is so much larger than our ability to see it all. It allows us to let go of the need to witness everything and instead simply appreciate the small piece of the shore where we stand in our minds. The water is a constant presence, a restless hymn on the garment of the land. But as we step back from the salt spray and the damp sand, we begin to move inland, away from the shifting tides and towards something much more permanent. Beneath the soil, beneath the roots of the trees and the moss of the tundra, lies the very skeleton of the continent. We are moving toward the heart of the land, leaving the rhythmic pulse of the ocean behind to find the unwavering, silent strength of the ancient rock that holds everything else up. As we step away from the shifting spray of the oceans, our feet find a different kind of certainty. We are moving on to the Canadian Shield, a massive expanse of rock that forms the very core of the North American continent. Imagine a great silent anchor shaped like a giant horseshoe, curving around the vast waters of Hudson Bay. This is the geological foundation of the nation, a place where the Earth's most ancient secrets are written in stone. It is a landscape that feels heavy with the weight of time, yet possesses a quiet, minimalist beauty that invites the mind to rest. When you stand on the shield, you are standing on some of the oldest material in the entire world. Some of these rocks are more than 4 billion years old. To put that into perspective, our planet itself is only about 4.5 billion years old. These stones were formed when the Earth was still cooling, long before the first forests grew and long before the first creatures crawled from the sea. They are the elders of the landscape, silent and unyielding. They have witnessed the birth of the atmosphere and the slow rhythmic dance of the continents as they drifted across the globe. The rock here is mostly granite and gneiss, often appearing in beautiful shades of deep gray, smoky rose, and pale white. If you were to press your palm against a smooth outcropping of this rock, you would feel its cool, steady temperature. It feels solid in a way that nothing else does. There is a profound sense of grounding here. In a world that often feels fast and ever-changing, the shield is a reminder of deep time, of a stability that spans eons. It is the literal foundation upon which everything else is built, a sturdy cradle for the life that clings to its surface. Over millions of years, gargantuan glaciers, kilometers thick, scraped across this surface. They acted like giant sheets of sandpaper, grinding down once mighty peaks and polishing the hard rock into the rolling, low-lying hills we see today. You can still see the long, straight grooves left behind by the ice, scars on the face of an ancient giant. This process of scraping and carving left the shield with a very thin layer of soil, or sometimes no soil at all. The rock sits bare and open to the sky, ancient and proud, weathered but never broken. Because this Precambrian rock is so incredibly hard and dense, it doesn't easily allow the elements to break it down. It is stubborn and protective. And because it is so solid, it acts like a giant, impervious bowl. When the rains fall or the snow melts, the water cannot simply sink deep into the earth. It cannot disappear into the depths. Instead, it lingers on the surface, caught in the hollows and basins carved out by the ancient ice. This creates a unique relationship between the stone and the sky, where the hardness of the earth meets the softness of the clouds. As we linger here, feeling the immense weight and peace of this 4-billion-year-old foundation, we can see how the landscape begins to change. The hard, gray stone doesn't just hold the history of the world, it also holds the water. Across this vast, rocky expanse, the hollows begin to fill, creating a shimmering mosaic that stretches as far as the eye can see. The ancient, unyielding strength of the shield provides the perfect basin for a landscape defined by liquid light. We are moving from the solid, silent stone into a world of endless, quiet reflections. As we look out over this ancient rocky cradle, we see how the water has settled into every curve and hollow left by the glaciers of the past. It is as if the earth itself is holding on to the sky, das, cradling it in millions of small liquid hands. Canada is famously known as the land of 1,000,000 lakes, but even that impressive number doesn't quite capture the true scale of this watery world. In reality, there are over 2 million lakes scattered across this vast northern landscape, ranging from tiny forest ponds to massive bodies of water that stretch beyond the horizon. If you were to look at a map of our entire planet, you would discover a surprising fact. Canada holds more lake area than any other nation on Earth. It is a staggering statistic to contemplate as you drift toward sleep. Over 60% of all the lakes in the entire world are found right here, nestled within these borders. This abundance of water creates a landscape that feels uniquely alive, yet profoundly still. It is a kingdom of fresh water, a place where the element of life is always within reach, always whispering in the background like a soft, rhythmic breath. Imagine, if you will, standing on the mossy edge of one of these countless lakes, just as the first light of dawn begins to touch the world. The air is cool and perfectly still, carrying the faint, clean scent of damp earth and ancient stone. At this early hour, the water is a masterpiece of clarity. Much of it originated from the slow, patient melting of glaciers thousands of years ago, and it remains remarkably pure, filtered by the northern wilderness. In the absence of any breeze, the surface of the lake becomes a perfect, unmoving mirror. The water is so clear that if you were to look down near the shore, you could see every individual pebble on the bottom, Smooth, rounded stones in shades of ochre, slate, and cream resting in their silent underwater garden. Further out, where the water deepens into a rich dark navy, the reflection takes over completely. The lake perfectly captures the tall, dark silhouettes of the surrounding pines and the soft, drifting colors of the sky. In this moment, the boundary between the earth and the heavens simply fades away. You are standing in a world of endless, calm blue mirrors, where every sight is doubled and every sound is muffled by the vast open space. The peace of such a place is restorative. It invites you to let go of the day's worries and simply exist in the stillness, much like the water itself. There is a deep rhythmic comfort in knowing that across millions of acres, this same quiet scene is playing out, lake after lake, reflecting the moon and the stars in a silent, silver symphony. These smaller, intimate waters are the quiet heart of the country, but they are only the beginning of the story. As we follow the gentle pull of gravity, the water begins to gather, moving from these hidden forest gems towards something much larger. We are leaving the small, mirrored ponds of the interior to approach the massive, rolling expanses of the Great Lakes, where the water meets the sky on a scale that truly humbles the spirit. As the small, intimate lakes of the forest give way, we find ourselves standing on the shores of something far more vast. These are the Great Lakes, a series of interconnected freshwater bodies so immense they are often called inland seas. Shared with neighbors to the south, these 5 lakes form a natural border and a massive reservoir of life, holding about 20% of the world's surface freshwater. Among them, one stands as the undisputed titan of the north, Lake Superior. Its name is fitting. Lake Superior is the largest freshwater lake in the world by surface area. To stand on its rugged, rocky shore is to look out at the horizon where the water meets the sky in a seamless blue curve, just as it does on the edge of the ocean. It covers an area of over 80,000 square kilometers, a space so large that it could easily contain several entire countries within its borders. When you stand here, the scale is difficult for the mind to fully grasp, and so it simply settles into a state of quiet wonder. But it is not just the surface that is impressive. It is the sheer silent volume of the water held within its basin. Lake Superior is deep, plunging down nearly 400 meters at its lowest point. There is enough water within this single lake to cover the entire landmass of North and South America in a foot of fresh, cold water. This incredible mass of liquid creates its own unique environment. Because the water takes so long to warm up in the summer and so long to cool down in the winter, the lake actually generates its own weather. On a quiet evening, you might see a gentle mist beginning to rise from the surface, a soft white blanket born from the temperature difference between the deep cold water and the cooling night air. This mist drifts shoreward, dampening the cedar trees and softening the sound of the world around you. The lake breathes, exhaling a cool, clean dampness that settles over the land like a heavy velvet curtain. It is a natural lullaby of atmosphere, a slow-moving veil that invites you to close your eyes and listen to the air. There is a profound, humbling power in these freshwater seas. Unlike the salt oceans, the air here is sweet and crisp, carrying the scent of pine and wet stone rather than brine. The waves do not always crash with jagged intensity. Often they roll in with a steady rhythmic pulse, a slow, deep heartbeat that resonates through the sand and the ancient Precambrian rock beneath your feet. It is a reminder of the scale of our world, of the hidden depths and the silent forces that shape the continent. Yet, even this massive collection of water is never truly still. It is part of a grand celestial movement, a slow migration toward the east. The water from the upper lakes flows steadily downward, gathering strength and momentum as it passes through the channels and smaller basins of the Great Lakes system. It is a journey of thousands of miles, a liquid path that is leading us toward one of the most famous spectacles on Earth. We are following the current now, feeling the pace pick up ever so slightly as the water prepares for its most dramatic transformation, the thunderous, rhythmic descent of Niagara Falls. As we follow the water's path, the sound begins to change. It is no longer the gentle, rhythmic lap of a lakeshore, but a deep, resonant hum that seems to vibrate through the very ground beneath your feet. We have arrived at Niagara Falls. Even from a distance, the air here feels different, cooler, heavier, and filled with a fine, invisible mist that softens the moonlight and dampens the sounds of the surrounding world. It is a place of immense power, yet as you settle into the sound, you realize it is also a place of profound, steady peace. It is difficult to truly grasp the sheer weight of what is happening here in the darkness. Every single second, approximately 3,160 tons of water surge over the edge of the precipice. If you were to visualize it, that is over 700,000 gallons of fresh water falling every moment, a collective energy of the Great Lakes pouring into the gorge below. But despite this incredible force, there is a hypnotic rhythm to the descent. The sound is so constant, so unchanging, that it becomes a form of silence. It is the ultimate white noise, a steady, low-frequency roar that drowns out the internal chatter of the mind and replaces it with a singular, focused vibration. It is a sound you don't just hear with your ears, but feel in your chest, a slow, deep pulse that invites your own heart rate to slow down and match the gravity of the earth. The science of this landscape is a story of patient, persistent movement. The falls are not a static monument. They are a living, rippling entity. This water is a master sculptor, slowly carving its way through ancient layers of hard dolomite and soft shale. Over the last 12,000 years, the falls have actually moved backward, retreating nearly 11 kilometers upstream from where they first began near Queenston. In the distant past, the rock eroded as much as a meter every year, though today the pace is slowed to just a few centimeters as the water's flow is carefully shared and managed. It is a reminder of deep time, the idea that even the most solid foundations of the world are in a state of beautiful, slow transformation. The falls are a clock that marks the passage of centuries with every drop that falls, a reminder that there is no need to hurry. Everything in time finds its way. If you were to stand at the edge of the railing now, the mist would feel like a cool, damp veil against your skin, refreshing and clean. The sight of the water turning from a smooth, dark glass at the brink into a soft, white curtain of foam is endlessly soothing. You can let the weight of your day fall away, just as the water falls, effortlessly, inevitably, and with a sense of complete surrender to the pull of the earth. The vibration of the basin below acts like a gentle lullaby for the senses, grounding you in the present moment. But as we begin to move away from the edge of the gorge, the thunderous roar starts to soften. The air remains cool and moist, but the heavy sound of the water is gradually replaced by a deep, expectant stillness. The mist gives way to the scent of damp earth, resin, and ancient needles. We are leaving the rushing currents behind and stepping into the shadowed, protective embrace of the trees. Ahead of us lies the great green crown of the continent, a vast and silent kingdom that stretches across the horizon for thousands of miles. We are entering the boreal forest, the lungs of the world, where the only sound is the soft, rhythmic sigh of the wind through the pines. As the thunder of the water fades into a distant rhythmic hum, we find ourselves stepping onto a floor made of soft, springy needles and emerald moss. The transition is seamless, like moving from a bustling street into a quiet, high-ceilinged library. We have entered the boreal forest, a place of such immense scale that it is often called the green crown of the planet. This is not just a collection of trees, it is a vast, breathing ecosystem that wraps around the northern reaches of the globe like a warm, emerald scarf. In Canada alone, this forest is a titan. It represents 25% of all the world's remaining intact forest, a staggering statistic that speaks to its resilience and its purity. To stand in the heart of the boreal is to stand in one of the last truly wild places on Earth, where the footprint of man is faint and the rhythm of nature remains undisturbed. It stretches for thousands of kilometers, from the rocky shores of Newfoundland all the way to the rugged mountains of the Yukon, a continuous ribbon of life that defines the very character of the North. Take a slow, deep breath in. Can you smell the air here? It is thick with the scent of balsam fir, black spruce, and jack pine, a perfume that is both sharp and sweet, grounding and ethereal. Science tells us that these scents are more than just pleasant. Trees release organic compounds called phytoncides, which have been shown to lower our heart rates and reduce stress. Just by imagining yourself here, walking through this endless green, your body begins to respond to the ancient chemistry of the woods. This forest is often referred to as the lungs of the world, and for good reason. Every needle, every leaf, and every branch is a tiny factory of life, drinking in the sunlight and the carbon of the atmosphere and breathing out the very oxygen that sustains us. In the summer months, the boreal forest undergoes a massive, quiet inhalation, pulling in billions of tons of carbon and storing it safely within its roots and the deep, cold soil. It is a slow planetary pulse, a reminder that the Earth is alive, breathing with us, supporting us in ways we rarely stop to consider. The canopy above is a protective shield, filtering the sunlight into soft, dappled patches of gold that dance across the forest floor. There is a profound sense of safety here, a feeling of being sheltered by a million living pillars. The trees stand close together, their branches interlacing to create a roof that muffles the wind and holds the stillness close to the ground. It is a cathedral of wood and light where the only thing expected of you is to simply be. As we wander deeper into this emerald sanctuary, the diversity of the forest begins to reveal itself. While the spruce and fir dominate the northern horizons, as we move slightly toward the warmer southern fringes of this great green belt, the evergreen needles begin to mingle with broad, flat leaves. Among these giants of the north, one tree stands out not just for its beauty, but for the lifeblood that flows within it. It is a tree that has become a symbol of resilience, sweetness, and the changing of the seasons. We find ourselves standing before a magnificent maple, its sturdy trunk anchored deep in the earth, waiting to tell us its own quiet story of transformation. Standing before this maple, you might notice its broad, reaching branches and the distinctive shape of its leaves, which seem to hold the very essence of the Canadians in spirit. While the vast evergreen forests of the north command the horizon, the maple brings a different kind of beauty to the landscape, a story of sweetness, change, and incredible biological precision. In Canada, there are 10 native species of maple, each with its own unique character. From the vine maple of the West Coast to the red and silver maples of the East, they form a diverse family of giants. But among them, the sugar maple, Acer saccharum, is perhaps the most cherished, a tree that holds a secret deep within its wooden heart. As the long, cold winter begins to lose its grip and the first hints of spring touch the air, a silent miracle occurs inside the trunk of the maple. This is the time of the sugar snow, when the days grow warm enough to melt the ice, but the nights remain crisp and freezing. This specific temperature dance, the rise and fall of the thermometer, acts like a heartbeat for the tree. During the day, as the sun warms the bark, the pressure inside the tree increases, pushing the sap upward from the roots toward the branches. At night, as the temperature drops, a vacuum is created, drawing water back up from the earth to replenish the tree's stores. This sap is not the thick golden syrup we know. In its natural state, it is as clear and thin as spring water, with just a hint of sweetness. Throughout the summer, the maple's wide leaves have been busy capturing sunlight, turning it into energy through photosynthesis and storing that energy as starch in its roots. As winter approached, the tree cleverly converted that starch into sucrose, a natural sugar that acts as an antifreeze, protecting the tree's living cells from the biting frost. When the sap begins to flow in the spring, it carries this concentrated energy upward, providing the fuel the tree needs to wake up and grow its new leaves. Think of this process as a gentle, rhythmic pulse, a slow circulation of life that has sustained these trees for centuries. It takes about 40 liters of this clear, watery sap to create just 1 liter of pure maple syrup, a testament to the quiet, patient concentration of nature's bounty. There is a profound sense of harmony in this cycle. The tree gives of its sweetness without being harmed, a gift born of the earth and the changing light. As the seasons continue their turn, the maple reflects the passing time with a spectacular display of color. In the autumn, when the days grow shorter and the air turns brittle, the green chlorophyll in the leaves begins to fade, revealing the brilliant yellows and oranges that were hidden beneath all along. In some maples, a chemical reaction creates deep, fiery reds, pigments called anthocyanins, that protect the leaf as it sends its final nutrients back into the tree for winter storage. It is a graceful letting go, a preparation for a deep and necessary rest. The maple leaf, with its elegant points and vibrant hues, has become more than just a part of the forest. It is a witness to the resilience and the quiet transitions of the land. We see this single leaf not just as a biological wonder, but as a representation of an entire nation's journey through the seasons. It is a symbol that has traveled from the forest floor to the very center of the world stage, carrying with it the peace and the enduring strength of the woods. This simple, graceful shape would eventually find its place at the heart of a national identity, woven into the fabric of a flag that tells the story of a people and their home. As we watch that single maple leaf drift slowly toward the forest floor, we might recognize its iconic shape from another place, fluttering high above on a flagpole silhouetted against a clear blue sky. It is a striking thought that for much of its history, this vast land did not have a flag of its own that was uniquely its own. For decades, the symbols used were those of the Old World, carrying the weight of distant empires and complicated histories. But in the early 1960s, there was a quiet, collective desire for a symbol that belonged truly and exclusively to this landscape. A symbol that could unite everyone under the shared beauty of the natural world. Imagine a time of great national reflection, often called the Great Flag Debate. It was a period of intense discussion, but also of incredible creativity. The government invited the people to share their visions for what a new flag should look like. In response, nearly 6,000 designs were submitted from every corner of the country. Some featured stars, some featured the northern lights, and many featured various arrangements of the maple leaf. Among these thousands of possibilities, a committee of historians and artists searched for a design that was simple, timeless, and immediately recognizable. On February 15, 1965, the red and white maple leaf flag was raised for the very first time on Parliament Hill. It was a moment of profound quiet and transition. The design they chose was deceptively simple. Two vibrant red borders flanking a white square with a single, stylized, 11-pointed red maple leaf at its center. The red is often said to represent the two oceans that cradle the nation, the Atlantic and the Pacific, while the white represents the vast, snowy expanses of the north. But it is the leaf itself that carries the most weight. By choosing a leaf as a national emblem, the country made a statement that its identity was rooted not in a crown or a coat of arms, but in the environment itself. The maple leaf is a neutral symbol, one that belongs to no single group, but to the land that sustains everyone. It represents growth, seasonal change, and the enduring strength of the forest. When you look at the flag, you are looking at a biological wonder transformed into a symbol of unity. There is a deep, settling peace in knowing that a nation's primary identity is tied so closely to the trees that breathe life into the air. It serves as a reminder that we are all, in some way, stewards of this ancient, quiet wilderness. As the flag flutters in the gentle wind, we find our thoughts drifting back from the heights of the flagpole and back down into the cool, shaded depths of the woods. The maples and the pines provide more than just symbols. They provide a home. Under the protective canopy of these great trees, the forest is alive with a different kind of industry. While we rest, other inhabitants of the woods are wide awake, moving through the undergrowth and the shallow streams with a steady, quiet purpose. Among the roots of the maples and along the banks of the winding rivers, we find a creature whose history is as deeply intertwined with this land as the leaf itself, a master of the water and a patient architect of the wild. As we follow the trickle of a stream through the roots of those maples, we encounter a creature that has shaped the very geography of the North for millennia. This is the beaver, nature's most industrious engineer. More than just a symbol on a nickel or a coat of arms, the beaver is a master of its environment, possessing a level of architectural skill that is unique in the animal kingdom. They are the second largest rodents in the world, surpassed only by the capybara of South America. But what they lack in sheer size compared to the great bears of the woods, they more than make up for in incredible persistence and a quiet, steady vision for the land they inhabit. The beaver does not merely live in the landscape, it redesigns it. By felling trees and gathering stones, they construct elaborate dams that can change the course of rivers and create vast, still ponds. In the remote wilderness of northern Alberta, within Wood Buffalo National Park, there is a beaver dam so massive that it can actually be seen from space. Stretching over 850 meters long, this structure was not built in a day. It is the result of decades of labor, passed down through generations of beavers, each one adding a layer of mud, a weave of willow branches, and a foundational log. It is a testament to what can be achieved through small, consistent actions, repeated over a long span of time. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of one of these beaver ponds as the sun begins to dip below the horizon. The air is cool and smells of damp earth and fresh wood. If you remain very still, you might hear the rhythmic scraping of orange enameled teeth against a poplar branch. A beaver's teeth are reinforced with iron, giving them their distinct color and the strength to chew through solid wood. They work with a patient focus, unaware of the world beyond their pond. Then perhaps you hear a sudden sharp thwack, the sound of a broad, flat tail hitting the water's surface. This is the beaver's way of communicating, a signal of safety or a gentle warning, a sound that ripples across the mirror-still water and then fades back into the silence of the woods. By building these dams, beavers perform a vital service for the planet. They create wetlands, which are often called the kidneys of the landscape, because of how they filter water and support an incredible diversity of life. These ponds become nurseries for fish, nesting grounds for migratory birds, and sanctuary for countless insects and amphibians. The beaver is a quiet steward of the water, working through the twilight hours to ensure the land remains hydrated and lush. There is a profound lesson in the beaver's lifestyle, a lesson of slow, steady, and purposeful work. They do not rush their constructions. They move one stick, one stone, one pawful of mud at a time, trusting that their steady efforts will eventually create a home that is safe, warm, and enduring. As you settle deeper into your blankets, perhaps you can find comfort in that same steady rhythm. There is no need to hurry toward tomorrow. Your rest, much like the beaver's dam, is a slow building of strength, a quiet, necessary process that prepares you for the world. But the beaver does not share these wetlands alone. In the soft blue light of the early morning, where the mist rises from the pond and clings to the tall grasses of the marsh, another figure often appears, a much larger presence. moving silently through the shallows on long, spindly legs. Leaving the small, busy architect to his morning rest, we turn our gaze toward a solitary wanderer of the northern marshlands, a silent giant that moves through the fog with an unexpected, ghostly grace. As the mist curls around the reeds of the beaver's pond, a shadow emerges from the tree line. It is a creature of immense scale, yet it moves with a lightness that seems to defy its weight. This is the moose, the undisputed monarch of the Canadian wetlands. In the soft pre-dawn light, you might see nothing but a silhouette at first. A great humped back and a set of wide, palm-like antlers that look like ancient carvings against the gray sky. There is a profound stillness to the moose, a sense that it is a living part of the forest itself, as steady and unmoving as the old-growth cedars. When you consider the sheer size of an adult moose, its ability to move silently through the thick brush is truly remarkable. A fully grown bull can stand 2 meters tall at the shoulder. That is taller than most humans, and that measurement is taken before you even account for the massive head and the sweeping span of the antlers. To stand near one is to feel small in the most comforting way, reminded of the vast wild world that exists far beyond our windows. Yet, despite this power, the moose is a peaceful herbivore, content to spend its hours wading through the shallows, feeding on the tender aquatic plants that grow beneath the surface of the water. The moose is perfectly engineered for the rugged Canadian climate. Each strand of its thick, coarse fur is actually hollow. These air-filled tubes provide a double benefit. They act as a layer of high-tech insulation, trapping body heat against the skin even when the temperature drops far below freezing, and they provide buoyancy. When a moose enters the water, these hollow hairs act like thousands of tiny life jackets, helping the heavy animal float. They are surprisingly strong swimmers, often crossing wide lakes or traveling between islands in search of food. They have even been known to dive over 5 meters deep to reach the nutrient-rich plants at the bottom of a lake, holding their breath with a calm, practiced ease. Imagine the sensation of that cold, clear water against their fur, a refreshing contrast to the humid air of the forest. Picture this solitary giant now, standing knee-deep in a quiet marsh as the fog rolls in. The only sound is the gentle drip of water from its muzzle as it lifts its head to scan the horizon. There is no urgency in its movement, no frantic energy. It exists in a state of perpetual patience, a wanderer that is never truly lost because the entire wilderness is its home. As you breathe in and out, try to mirror that same steady, grounded presence. Feel the weight of your own body supported by your bed, just as the earth supports the heavy stride of the moose. There is a deep, ancient peace in the way this animal inhabits its space, solitary, silent, and entirely at ease with the world. But as we follow the path of the moose further toward the horizon, the lush greens of the marsh begin to fade. The trees become smaller, more stunted by the wind, until they disappear altogether. The air grows sharper, crisper, and the ground beneath becomes a permanent layer of frost. We are leaving the temperate forests behind and moving into the vast, white expanse of the far north. Here, the landscape belongs to a different kind of giant, a creature of ice and snow that thrives where most life would falter. We leave the marshlands behind and turn our gaze toward the high Arctic, where the world is painted in shades of white and blue. In this landscape of endless white, where the wind carves sculptures out of frozen drifts, we encounter the true monarch of the North, the polar bear. Often called the ghost of the Arctic, this magnificent creature moves with a silent, heavy grace across the frozen sea ice. Imagine the vast open tundra stretching out before you, a world of pure, blinding white, where the only sound is the soft, rhythmic crunch of heavy paws against the crust of the snow. There is a profound stillness here, a quiet that feels as deep as the ice itself. If we travel to the western shores of Hudson Bay, we find the town of Churchill, Manitoba. This small, remote community is known globally as the polar bear capital of the world. Every autumn, as the air turns brittle and the bay begins to freeze, dozens of bears gather here, waiting with a patient stillness for the ice to become thick enough to support their weight so they can begin their winter journey. They are masters of waiting, understanding the slow rhythms of the seasons with an innate ancient wisdom. They do not fight the cold, they inhabit it, becoming part of the frost and the wind. There is a fascinating science behind how they survive in temperatures that would freeze most life in an instant. Though they appear white to our eyes, a polar bear's fur is actually translucent. Each individual hair is a clear, hollow tube that scatters and reflects the light of the sun, giving them their brilliant, snowy camouflage. But beneath that thick, dual-layered coat, their skin is surprisingly black. This dark skin acts like a natural solar panel, absorbing every bit of warmth from the pale Arctic sun. It is a perfect design of nature, reflecting the light to stay hidden while soaking in the heat to stay warm. Between the black skin and the translucent fur sits a layer of blubber up to 10 centimeters thick, a warm, insulating embrace that keeps the bear close even when swimming through slush-filled waters. To live here is to master the art of conservation. A polar bear spends much of its time in a state of quiet rest, a form of walking hibernation. They move slowly and deliberately to avoid overheating, because their insulation is so effective that even a brisk walk can make them too warm in the sub-zero air. When they lie down to sleep, they often dig a shallow pit in the snow to shield themselves from the biting wind, curling into a tight ball and letting the falling flakes cover them like a heavy, white blanket. There is a profound sense of endurance in this image, a life that doesn't just survive the extreme, but finds a home within it. As you settle deeper into your own blankets, think of the polar bear resting in the snow, perfectly warm, perfectly safe, and entirely at peace with the silence of the north. Its breath rises in small, slow clouds of steam, disappearing into the crisp air. As we watch this silent giant rest against the white horizon, the world around us begins to grow dim. The long Arctic twilight settles in, turning the snow into shades of deep indigo and soft violet. The wind dies down to a whisper, and the air becomes perfectly still, crystalline and clear. It is in this deep northern darkness that we find ourselves naturally looking up. Away from the glare of the white snow, the sky reveals its own secrets. Above the sleeping bears and the frozen plains, the atmosphere begins to stir with a different kind of energy, preparing to paint the heavens in colors that dance across the dark. We turn our gaze from the earth to the stars, where a soft, glowing light is beginning to flicker. High above the silent, frozen plains where the polar bears rest, a different kind of life begins to stir in the deep ink of the night sky. It starts as a faint, ghostly shimmer, almost like a thin veil of mist caught in a breeze that only the stars can feel. This is the aurora borealis, the northern lights, a celestial display that has transformed the dark northern winters into a canvas of wonder for thousands of years. As you lie still, imagine looking up from a bed of soft snow, or perhaps through a frosted window, to see the heavens beginning to glow with a soft, pulsing light. The science of the aurora is a story of a long-distance connection between our Earth and the Sun. It begins with the solar wind, a stream of charged particles that flows out from the Sun and travels across the vast, cold vacuum of space at incredible speeds. When these particles reach our planet, they are guided by the Earth's magnetic field, drawn toward the north and south poles. Like invisible threads pulling at the fabric of the sky, as they enter our upper atmosphere, they collide with the gases that make up our air, oxygen and nitrogen. These collisions release energy in the form of light, creating the luminous ribbons that we see dancing across the horizon. It is a beautiful reminder that we are part of a much larger, living solar system, and that even in the quietest moments of the night, the universe is interacting with our world in a silent, glowing embrace. The most common color of the aurora is a pale, soothing green, created when solar particles collide with oxygen molecules about 100 kilometers above the Earth. This specific shade of green is remarkably calming, a neon glow that feels organic and soft. Sometimes, if the solar wind is stronger and reaches deeper into the atmosphere, you might see fringes of delicate pink or deep violet at the bottom of the curtains, caused by interactions with nitrogen. On rare occasions, a high-altitude glow of crimson red appears, reaching far into the dark. These colors don't just sit still. They move with a slow, hypnotic grace. They undulate like silk curtains caught in a slow-motion draft, or like the rhythmic breathing of the sky itself. There is no sound to this dance, only a profound luminous silence that fills the mind with a sense of peace. This is a visual lullaby, a display of cosmic energy that feels both immense and incredibly gentle. To watch the lights is to feel the scale of the universe while being protected by the safety of the atmosphere. The aurora doesn't rush. It flows, shifting its shape from long, straight pillars to swirling spirals that span the entire dome of the sky. It is as if the heavens are performing a slow, glowing meditation just for you, a reminder of the quiet energy that exists all around us. But to see this dance in all its glory, one needs more than just a clear sky. One needs a profound, uninterrupted darkness. In our modern world, the glow of cities often hides the subtle beauty of the stars and the aurora, masking the ancient lights with artificial ones. To truly connect with the rhythms of the cosmos, we must seek out the places where the night is still pure and deep. As the colors of the aurora begin to fade back into the velvet black, we find ourselves appreciating the rare gift of true darkness, a darkness that allows the universe to reveal its most hidden and beautiful secrets. To find this purity of night, we turn to Canada's dark sky preserves, vast, protected areas where the glow of the modern world is intentionally kept at bay. These are sanctuaries not just for the trees and the animals, but for the darkness itself. In a world that is increasingly illuminated by artificial light, these preserves act as a bridge back to the way our ancestors saw the heavens. Canada is home to some of the largest and most pristine dark sky preserves on Earth, regions where the environment is managed to ensure that the stars can be seen in their full, unblemished glory. One of the most remarkable of these is Wood Buffalo National Park, spanning the border between Alberta and the Northwest Territories. It is the largest dark sky preserve in the world. To put its scale into perspective, the park is larger than the entire country of Switzerland. In the heart of this wilderness, far from the nearest town or highway, the darkness is profound and velvety. It is a place where the night is allowed to be exactly what it is, a deep, quiet space for reflection and rest. When the sun dips far below the horizon and the last traces of twilight vanish, the sky transforms into a masterpiece of celestial geometry. Without the interference of city lights, your eyes begin to adjust in a way they rarely get to do in our daily lives. The pupils dilate, and the brain begins to process the subtle gradients of the night. You begin to see that the sky is not just black, but a rich, deep indigo, layered with textures of cosmic dust and distant suns. The Milky Way emerges not as a faint, ghostly smudge, but as a thick, luminous river of starlight arching from one horizon to the other. It is so bright in these preserves that it can actually cast a faint, soft shadow on the ground beneath you, a shadow made of starlight. As you lie back and look upward, the sheer number of stars is breathtaking, yet strangely calming. In a typical city, you might see a few dozen stars on a clear night. Here, you can see thousands upon thousands, each one a steady point of light in the stillness. There is a scientific peace in this clarity. You are seeing light that has traveled for hundreds, even thousands of years across the vacuum of space just to reach your eyes. This connection to the distant past and the vastness of the universe provides a sense of perspective that is uniquely suited for sleep. You might feel small under such an infinite canopy, but it is a safe, grounded kind of smallness. It is the feeling of being tucked into a vast, celestial cradle. The atmosphere above acts as a soft, protective blanket, keeping the air you breathe close to the earth, while the universe puts on its silent, eternal display. There is no noise in the stars, only a rhythmic, shimmering presence that reminds us of the stability of the cosmos. The stars have been there long before us, and they will remain long after, moving in their predictable, slow orbits. This clarity of the night sky has been a constant companion to the land for eons. Long before these areas were designated as preserves, and long before the first maps were drawn by explorers, these stars served as the primary storytellers for the people of this land. For the indigenous communities who have lived here for thousands of years, the dark sky was never an empty void, but a crowded map of history, legend, and guidance. As we settle into the quiet of the present night, we begin to feel the pull of that history, shifting our gaze from the distant stars back down to the earth beneath us, and to the deep roots of the people who first looked up in wonder. As the starlight fades into the back of your mind, imagine the land itself holding the memories of those who have walked upon it for thousands of years. Long before the borders we recognize today were drawn on maps, this vast territory was and remains the home of diverse and vibrant indigenous peoples. To understand the heart of this land, we must look to these deep, ancient roots that stretch back through the mists of time, far beyond the reach of written history. It is a beautiful and complex tapestry. Across the reaches of what we now call Canada, there are more than 630 distinct First Nations communities. Each one carries its own unique heritage, its own stories, and its own deep connection to the specific geography they call home. From the cedar forest of the West Coast to the rolling prairies and the rocky shores of the Atlantic, these cultures are as varied as the landscapes themselves. There is no single story here, but a chorus of voices speaking over 50 different indigenous languages. Some of these languages are as different from one another as English is from Cantonese, reflecting a richness of human experience that has flourished in harmony with the seasons for millennia. The very name of the country, Canada, carries this history within it. It is a word born from a simple, grounded reality. In 1535, when early explorers were being guided through the St. Lawrence River region, they heard the word Kanata used by the local Iroquoian people. In their language, Kanata simply meant village or settlement. It was a word for home, a place where people gathered, shared meals, and found shelter from the wind. The explorers, perhaps overwhelmed by the scale of the world they were seeing, began to use the word to describe the entire region. Over time, this humble word for a single village grew and expanded, eventually naming the second largest country on Earth. There is something deeply peaceful in the idea that a nation of millions takes its name from a word that means, quite simply, a place to belong. This sense of belonging is tied to a philosophy of stewardship that has guided these communities for generations. Rather than seeing the land as something to be conquered or used, there is a traditional understanding of the earth as a living entity to be cared for. It is a slow, patient relationship based on the idea that we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, but borrow it from our children. This perspective creates a natural rhythm of life, one that respects the migration of the caribou, the spawning of the salmon, and the quiet growth of the medicinal plants in the forest undergrowth. As you settle deeper into your pillows, let the weight of this long-standing stewardship offer you a sense of security. The land has been watched over with care and respect for a very long time. It is a stable, enduring foundation. But while these roots grew deep into the soil and the forests of the interior, the edges of the continent were beginning to feel the touch of the outside world. Far to the east, where the Atlantic waves rhythmically beat against the jagged cliffs, the silence of the horizon was about to be broken by the sight of unfamiliar sails. The story of the land was beginning a new chapter, brought by travelers from across the cold, gray northern seas. Imagine, if you will, the gray-blue horizon of the North Atlantic over 1,000 years ago. The air is sharp with salt and the biting chill of the Labrador current. Through the swirling mist, the rhythmic creak of wooden timber joins the sound of waves. Long, narrow ships with single square sails emerge from the fog, guided by nothing more than the stars, the flight of birds, and the ancient intuition of the sea. These were the Norse explorers, the Vikings, and around the year 1000, nearly 5 centuries before Christopher Columbus would set to sail, they became the first Europeans to touch the soil of North America. They landed at a place we now call L'Anse aux Meadows, located on the very northern tip of the island of Newfoundland. It is a land of rugged, wind-swept beauty, where the earth seems to hold its breath against the power of the ocean. Even today, if you were to stand there, you would feel a profound sense of isolation and peace. The trees here, often called tuckamore, are stunted and twisted by the relentless wind, leaning away from the sea as if bowing to its strength. The ground is a soft carpet of moss and hardy grasses, colored in muted tones of amber and deep green. When the Norse arrived, they did not build soaring stone fortresses. Instead, they worked with the land itself. They constructed long, low-sod houses, their walls made of thick layers of turf cut directly from the earth. These structures were designed to be part of the landscape, hugging the ground to stay warm against the Atlantic gales. Inside, the air would have been thick with the scent of wood smoke and damp earth, a small sanctuary of human warmth in a vast, unknown world. Archaeologists have found the remains of 8 such buildings, including workshops where they forged iron from the local bog ore, the first evidence of iron smelting in the New World. There is a quiet mystery to this place. For a brief window of time, this was a bustling outpost, a place where people mended nets, shared stories of the sea, and looked out over the water toward a horizon that seemed to go on forever. They called this region Vinland, a name that suggests a land of bounty and wild grapes. But as quickly as they arrived, they seemed to vanish. Perhaps the distance from their homes in Greenland was too great, or perhaps the land was simply too wild to tame at the time. By the time the grass grew back over the roofs of their sod houses, the Vikings were gone, leaving behind only the faint outlines of their homes and the echoes of their sagas. For nearly 1,000 years, the site remained silent, a secret kept by the wind and the shifting soil, until it was rediscovered in the 1960s. It serves as a reminder of the quiet persistence of human curiosity, the drive to see what lies beyond the next wave, even when the journey is long and the destination is uncertain. As you rest now, let your mind drift like those ancient ships, moving slowly across the calm, dark waters of history. The Norse were the first to scratch the surface of this vast continent, but they would not be the last. As the centuries turned, the maps of the world began to fill in, and the silence of the Canadian wilderness once again beckoned to those across the sea. The focus shifted from the rugged shores of Newfoundland toward the deeper mysteries of the North and West. A new generation of travelers was preparing to enter the labyrinth of islands and ice, driven by a dream of a shortcut to the riches of the East. They were looking for a way through the heart of the world, a path that would come to be known as the Northwest Passage. The era of the great mapping of the interior was about to begin, guided by the stars and a quiet, unyielding hope. Imagine a map with a vast white space at the top, a puzzle that remained unsolved for generations. This was the quest for the Northwest Passage, a legendary sea route through the labyrinth of the Arctic archipelago that would, in theory, connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. For more than 400 years, some of the world's most patient and daring navigators turned their prows toward the frozen north, seeking a shortcut to the riches of Asia. They were drawn by the allure of the unknown, moving slowly into a realm where the water and the sky often blurred into a single shimmering shade of silver. To enter these waters was to enter a world of suspended time. The explorers who sailed here, names like Franklin, Ross, and Amundsen, did not measure their progress in knots or miles, but in the slow, grinding movement of the tides and the shifting of the pack ice. Navigation in the Arctic required a deep, meditative patience. Often, a ship would find its path blocked by a wall of ice miles wide, and the only choice was to wait. Sometimes they waited for days, and sometimes for entire seasons, anchored to a floe, listening to the groaning and creaking of the hull against the frozen sea. In the journals of these travelers, they frequently marveled at the absolute silence of the high north. Far from the bustling ports of Europe or the wind-swept forests of the south, the Arctic offered a stillness that was almost spiritual. They wrote of the ice blink, a pale, luminous glow on the horizon where the ice reflects the light of the sky, and of the way the air felt so crisp and clear that distant mountains seemed close enough to touch. They described the stars as being brighter than anywhere else on Earth, hanging like cold diamonds over a landscape of infinite wide. There was a profound beauty in this isolation, a sense of being at the very edge of the world, where the only sounds were the breath of the wind and the occasional distant thunder of a glacier calving into the sea. This quest was not just about finding a trade route, it was about the quiet persistence of human discovery. Each expedition added a few more lines to the map, naming a bay here, an island there, slowly stitching together the geography of a continent. They learned the ways of the ice, observing how it breathed and moved with the seasons, and they learned from the Inuit, who had lived in harmony with this frozen landscape for millennia. Even when the passage remained elusive, the act of searching brought a deeper understanding of the Earth's scale and the resilience required to wander through its most quiet, challenging corners. As the 19th century progressed and the maps of the frozen North were gradually filled in, piece by icy piece, a different kind of map began to take shape further south. The era of the lonely explorer, battling the elements in search of a path through the ice, was beginning to transition into a new chapter. The focus shifted from the edges of the continent to its heart. The scattered colonies and vast territories were beginning to look inward, finding common ground in their shared landscapes and their shared hopes for the future. The spirit of persistence that had guided the ships through the Northwest Passage was now being channeled into a different kind of journey, the peaceful gathering of people to envision a single, unified home. The cold, silent mysteries of the North had set the stage for a warm, deliberative beginning, as the foundations of a modern nation were about to be laid not through conflict, but through the quiet power of conversation. While many nations find their beginnings in the heat of revolution and the thunder of cannons, the story of Canada's birth is one of quiet rooms, ink-stained pages, and the patient murmur of voices in dialogue. It is a story that feels as steady and calm as the landscapes we have been wandering through. In the mid-19th century, the leaders of various colonies and territories began to realize that they were stronger together than they were apart. But they didn't seek this unity through conflict. Instead, they sought it through the art of the meeting, the power of persuasion, and the slow, deliberate work of compromise. Imagine a soft September afternoon in 1864 in the seaside town of Charlottetown on Prince Edward Island. The air is salty and cool, carrying the scent of the Atlantic. Here, a group of delegates gathered for what would become known as the Charlottetown Conference. They didn't meet on a battlefield, but in a stately stone building, sitting in heavy wooden chairs, their voices low and thoughtful. They talked about railways that would cement the continent, about shared responsibilities, and about the dream of a country that reached from sea to sea. There was a sense of shared purpose, a quiet understanding that they were building something meant to last, stone by stone, word by word. This process continued through further meetings in Quebec City and London, leading eventually to July 1st, 1867. This was the year the British North America Act was passed, officially creating the Dominion of Canada. It wasn't a sudden, jarring break from the past, but a peaceful transition, a legal and political evolution that transformed a collection of colonies into a single, unified nation. It is a rare thing in history for a country to be born from a series of handshakes and signatures, but this peaceful foundation became a core part of the national character. At the heart of this new nation was a specific guiding principle, written into its very constitution. While other nations might focus on the pursuit of individual happiness or liberty, Canada's founding document emphasized peace, order, and good government. It is a phrase that sounds like a long, slow breath. It suggests a society built on stability, on the quiet functioning of systems that care for the collective whole. It is the idea that progress is best achieved when things are calm, predictable, and fair. This philosophy created a framework where people could live in safety, knowing that the structures of their world were designed to be steady and reliable, like the ancient rock of the shield beneath their feet. There is a deep sense of comfort in this history of compromise. It reminds us that big, meaningful changes don't always require noise or upheaval. Sometimes the most enduring things are built in the quiet spaces between people, through the patient act of listening and the willingness to find middle ground. This legacy of peace, order, and good government provided a stable environment for more than just politics. It created a culture where people felt encouraged to look closely at the world around them and ask how they might make it better. This spirit of quiet persistence, of looking for ways to improve the lives of many through steady, patient work, did not stop at the borders of law and governance. It flowed naturally into the quiet laboratories and the halls of the learning. Just as the founders of the country sat in hushed rooms to solve the puzzles of a new nation, others would soon sit in the silence of their own workspaces, looking through microscopes and scribbling notes in the dim light of evening. The focus was shifting from the organization of the land to the mysteries of the human body, leading to discoveries that would offer healing to the entire world. In the same way that a few thoughtful voices could change the map of a continent, a few dedicated minds were about to change the very course of medicine. Imagine, if you will, the city of Toronto in the sweltering summer of 1921, while the rest of the world was busy with the noise of a new decade. Two men were tucked away in a small, simple laboratory at the University of Toronto. Frederick Banting, a young surgeon with a persistent, quiet idea, and Charles Best, a medical student, were engaged in a task that required an immense patience and steady focus. They were searching for a mystery within the human body, a way to manage the sugar in our blood. At that time, certain illnesses were seen as insurmountable, a heavy weight that medicine hadn't yet learned how to lift. But in the stillness of that lab, surrounded by glass beakers and the rhythmic scratching of pens on paper, a miracle of science was quietly unfolding. The work was not glamorous. It was a process of trial and error, of long nights and early mornings spent in the hushed corridors of the university. They were looking for a specific secretion from the pancreas, something they believed could unlock the body's ability to heal itself. This substance, which we now know as insulin, acts like a gentle key, opening the doors of our cells so they can receive the energy they need. In 1921, Banting and Best successfully isolated this key. It was a moment of profound discovery that happened not with a shout, but with the quiet realization that the world had just changed forever. When they saw the first signs that their discovery was working, it wasn't just a scientific victory. It was a gift to humanity, in a gesture that reflects a deep-seated value of care and community. Banting and his colleagues made a choice that still resonates today. They sold the patent for insulin to the University of Toronto for just $1. Banting famously said that insulin does not belong to him, it belongs to the world. They believed that such a life-saving discovery should be accessible to everyone, regardless of their circumstances. This act of selflessness ensured that the medicine could be produced and shared globally, almost immediately saving millions of lives and offering hope where there had been none. In 1923, the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine was awarded for this work. The first time this prestigious honor had ever been given to a Canadian. It is a comforting thought, as you settle deeper into your pillows, to know that some of the most profound healing in human history began with such humble, quiet persistence. It reminds us that progress often comes from those who are willing to sit in the silence, to look closely at the smallest details, and to work steadily for the benefit of others. The legacy of insulin is one of peace and restoration, a testament to the idea that science, at its best, is a form of kindness. This focus on the internal workings of the human body, on the tiny invisible signals that keep us healthy and whole, was just one way that inquisitive minds were bridging the gaps between what we knew and what we could achieve. While Banting and Best were mapping the inner landscape of our health, others were looking outward at the space between people. They were wondering how we might bridge the vast physical distances of the land itself. Science was not just about healing the body. It was about connecting the spirit through the power of communication. Just as insulin allowed a person to live a full, steady life, a different kind of breakthrough was about to allow the human voice to travel across mountains and prairies, making a massive, silent country feel just a little bit smaller and a little more like home. As we move from the quiet corridors of a research lab to the open rolling hills of southern Ontario, we find another story of profound connection. While we often think of the great vastness of Canada as a physical barrier, it has also been the inspiration for some of the world's most significant leaps in communication. Imagine, if you will, the gentle, rhythmic flow of the Grand River near the town of Brantford. It was here, in the late 19th century, that a young man named Alexander Graham Bell spent his summers resting and thinking under the shade of the trees. Though he was born in Scotland and spent much of his professional life in the United States, Bell always maintained that his most pivotal ideas were born in the stillness of the Canadian countryside. He referred to his family's home in Brantford as his dreaming place. It is a comforting thought to imagine that the invention that would eventually connect the entire world began as a series of quiet reflections by a riverbank. Bell was a student of sound. His work with the deaf had given him a deep scientific understanding of how vibrations move through the air and how the human ear translates those movements into meaning. He wondered if those same vibrations could be translated into electrical impulses and sent across a wire, allowing a human voice to travel faster and further than ever before. In August of 1876, the world changed in a way that felt almost like magic. Bell conducted the first successful long-distance telephone call between the town of Brantford and the nearby community of Paris, Ontario. It was a distance of only about 13 kilometers, but in that moment, the vastness of the world began to shrink. Imagine the crackle of the early line, the soft hum of electricity, and then, emerging from the silence, the clear, recognizable sound of a human voice. It was a bridge built of copper and curiosity, spanning the distance between 2 points that had previously been separated by hours of travel. This breakthrough was the beginning of a new era for a country as large as Canada. As the miles of wire began to stretch across the prairies, through the dense boreal forests, and over the rugged peaks of the Rockies, the silence of the wilderness was no longer a sign of isolation. It became a space that could be crossed in an instant. The telephone offered a sense of profound security. It meant that even in the most remote cabin or the quietest farmhouse, you were never truly alone. A voice was always within reach, a thread of human connection that could pull people together across thousands of miles. There is a deep peace in the idea of being connected, of knowing that our thoughts and our words can travel through the air and the earth to find someone else. It is a reminder that no matter how vast the landscape may be, we are never truly separate. As you rest now, let that feeling of connection settle over you like a warm blanket. The same principles of physics and engineering that allowed a voice to travel across Ontario would eventually allow us to reach even further. Having mastered the art of talking across the land and under the sea, our curiosity began to drift upward, beyond the clouds. We began to wonder if we could extend our reach not just across the earth, but into the silent, starlit vacuum of space itself. Just as a wire could carry a whisper across a province, we began to imagine the tools that could carry our presence into the very heart of the cosmos. As we look up into the deep velvet blackness of the night sky, we find that Canada's story isn't just written in the soil and the stone of the earth below. It is also etched into the silent, weightless expanse of space. Just as the telephone wires once bridged the vast distances of the prairies, a remarkable piece of engineering eventually bridged the gap between our world and the stars. This is the story of the Canadarm, a slender, graceful limb of white and metal that became the nation's most iconic contribution to the exploration of the final frontier. First launched in 1981 aboard the Space Shuttle Columbia, the Canadarm, officially known as the Shuttle Remote Manipulator System, was much more than just a tool. It was a mechanical marvel of incredible precision. Imagine a giant robotic arm, 15 meters long, designed to function in an environment where there is no gravity to hold things down and no air to dampen movement. In the absolute quiet of orbit, the Canadarm moved with a slow, deliberate grace, much like the way a hand might reach out to steady a drifting leaf. The science behind it is fascinating yet soothing. Because it operated in microgravity, the arm didn't need to support its own weight, allowing it to be light and flexible while still being strong enough to move massive payloads. It could deploy satellites into the void with the gentleness of a parent tucking in a child, or reach out to capture a malfunctioning spacecraft, bringing it safely into the shuttle's cargo bay for repair. It was the arm of the shuttle, providing a reach that humans alone could never achieve. One of the most beautiful moments in its history is what astronauts affectionately called the Canadian handshake. This occurred when the original Canadarm on the Space Shuttle worked in perfect synchronization with its larger, more advanced successor, Canadarm2, which is permanently attached to the International Space Station. The two arms would meet in the silence of space, transferring equipment or supplies from one to the other with millimeter-level accuracy. It was a slow-motion dance of technology, a testament to the power of gentle, steady precision. There is something deeply reassuring in that image of two great machines meeting in the dark, working together in perfect harmony thousands of miles above the resting world. This mechanical precision brings a sense of quiet pride, a reminder that even the most complex problems can be solved with patience and careful design. As you drift closer to sleep, visualize that arm moving slowly against the backdrop of the Earth, a blue and white marble glowing softly in the distance. The Canadarm reminds us that we are capable of reaching out into the unknown with care and purpose. But as much as we have looked to the stars, the physics of our own planet offers wonders that are just as rhythmic and powerful. The same forces of gravity that keep the International Space Station in its steady orbit also pull upon the waters of our world, creating movements that are ancient and grand. To see the most dramatic display of these cosmic forces, we must return our gaze from the blackness of space back down to the rugged, salt-sprayed shores of Canada's east coast. There, the dance between the moon and the earth creates a spectacle of water and time that is unlike anywhere else on the globe. Imagine standing on the edge of a rugged coastline where the Atlantic Ocean meets the shores of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. Here, the air is thick with the scent of salt and ancient stone, and the sound of the water is a constant, low hum. This is the Bay of Fundy, a place where the Earth's natural rhythms are more visible than perhaps anywhere else on the planet. While the moon's gravity pulls gently on all the world's oceans, here, because of the unique, funnel-like shape of the bay, that pull is amplified into something truly extraordinary. Every single day, twice a day, the Bay of Fundy experiences the highest tides in the world. In some areas, the water level rises and falls by as much as 16 meters. That is roughly the height of a 4-story building. To see it in person is to witness a slow-motion transformation of the landscape. At low tide, you can walk for miles on the red, muddy ocean floor, exploring hidden caves and looking up at towering rock formations that normally sit deep underwater. Then, as the hours pass, the sea begins its inevitable return. It doesn't rush in like a crashing wave. Instead, it rises with a steady, unstoppable grace, reclaiming the land inch by inch until those same towering rocks are nearly submerged, appearing only as small islands in a vast blue expanse. The science behind this is a phenomenon called tidal resonance. Think of the water in the bay like water sloshing back and forth in a bathtub. The time it takes for a large wave to travel from the mouth of the bay to the end and back again perfectly matches the timing of the tides themselves. This synchronization causes the water to build up higher and higher, creating a pulse that is as regular as a heartbeat. During each tide cycle, approximately 160 billion tons of seawater flow in and out of the bay. To put that into perspective, that is more water than the combined flow of all the world's freshwater rivers during the same period. As you settle deeper into your blankets, imagine the sheer weight of that water, billions of tons moving with silent, rhythmic purpose. It is a powerful reminder of the Earth's massive scale. Along the shoreline, you might find the Hopewell Rocks, also known as the Flower Pot Rocks. For thousands of years, the relentless movement of these tides has carved the base of these sandstone pillars into narrow, curved shapes, leaving the tops wide and covered with hardy evergreen trees. They look like giant sculptures created by the sea itself. At low tide, they stand like silent guardians on the muddy flats, their shadows lengthening as the sun begins to set. There is a profound peace in the predictability of this cycle. The tide has been rising and falling like this for thousands of years, and it will continue to do so for thousands more. It is the ocean's breath, a slow, deep inhalation and exhalation that connects the land to the moon and the stars. The rhythmic pulse of the Bay of Fundy is a natural lullaby, a steady movement that requires nothing from us but our quiet observation. As the tide recedes once more, leaving the red mud glinting in the soft light, we leave the salt spray of the Atlantic behind. Our journey now takes us away from the sea-level shores, traveling westward across the vast rolling plains of the interior, toward a different kind of majesty, one that reaches not into the depths of the ocean, but high into the thin, cold air of the clouds. We are moving toward the great spine of the continent, where the earth has been pushed upward into jagged peaks and ancient ice. Imagine the transition now, as the wide, golden expanses of the prairies begin to ripple and fold, rising slowly into the foothills of the west. The air becomes crisper, scented with the sharp, clean aroma of cedar and pine as we approach the great spine of the continent, the Canadian Rockies. These are not merely hills, but ancient monuments of stone standing in silent, snow-capped majesty. Among them rises Mount Robson, a giant that reaches 3,954 meters into the sky. Its peak is often shrouded in a soft veil of mist, a mountain so tall it creates its own weather, standing as a quiet sentinel over the surrounding valleys. To understand how these massive peaks came to be, we must look back millions of years, to a time when the Earth's crust was moving with a slow, patient persistence. The Rockies were formed by the immense pressure of tectonic plates, the massive slabs of Earth's outer shell, pressing against one another. It was not a sudden event, but a gradual rhythmic folding of the land, as if the Earth itself were taking a long, deep breath and lifting its shoulders toward the stars. Over eons, this pressure pushed layers of ancient sedimentary rock upward, sculpting the jagged ridges and deep valleys we see today. Cradled within these high mountain passes are some of the most beautiful sights on our planet, the glacial lakes. Perhaps the most famous is Lake Louise, a body of water so still and vibrant it looks like a fallen piece of the sky. The water here is a stunning milky turquoise, a color created by a phenomenon known as rock flower. As glaciers slowly move across the mountain slopes, they grind the solid rock beneath them into a fine, silk-like powder. When this powder, suspended in the water, catches the sunlight, it reflects a brilliant blue-green glow that feels almost magical. Imagine standing on the shore of such a lake at dawn. The water is a perfect mirror, reflecting the dark greens of the forest and the gray-white of the peaks above. There is no wind, no sound, only the profound, heavy stillness of the high country. Higher still, we find the great ice fields, like the Columbia ice field, where the ice is hundreds of meters thick. This is ancient water, frozen in time, some of it having fallen as snow centuries ago. Walking near these glaciers, you can feel a gentle, cool draft, the glacier's breath, rolling down from the heights. It is a place of absolute peace, where time seems to slow down to the pace of the moving ice, which crawls forward only a few centimeters each year. The mountains remind us of the beauty of endurance and the quiet power of things that take a long time to grow. As we linger in the shadows of these giants, we begin to realize that the mountains are not just made of stone. They are also keepers of history. Within the very layers of rock that were pushed up from the ancient seafloors, there are secrets waiting to be discovered. If we look closely at the steep cliffs and shale slopes, we find the delicate imprints of creatures that lived long before the mountains even existed. We are about to descend from the high peaks into a specific layer of the earth, where the story of life itself is written in the stone. As we move our gaze from the high, snow-dusted peaks of the Rockies, we look down at the dark, layered stone beneath our feet. Here, tucked away in the high ridges of Yoho National Park in British Columbia, the mountains hold a secret that dates back far longer than the peaks themselves. This is the Burgess Shale, one of the most significant fossil finds in the history of our planet. It is a place where time seems to fold in on itself, revealing a window into a world that existed over 500 million years ago, during a period scientists call the Cambrian explosion. In most parts of the world, the fossil record is like a book with most of its pages torn out. We usually only see the hard parts of ancient life, the teeth, the bones, the thick shells, but the Burgess Shale is a rare exception. It is a Lagerstätte, a word that means a place of extraordinary preservation. 500 million years ago, this area was shallow sea near the equator. A series of sudden, gentle underwater mudslides swept up thousands of tiny, soft-bodied creatures and buried them in an environment without oxygen. This prevented decay, allowing the fine silt to map out every delicate detail, the curve of a fin, the segments of a limb, even the dark smudge of a digestive tract, or the glint of a primitive eye. Imagine holding a piece of this cold, smooth shale in your hands. On its surface, you might see the imprint of an Anomalocaris, a creature that looked like a cross between a shrimp and a squid with two long curling arms and a circular mouth. To us, it seems alien, but 500 million years ago, it was the king of the seas. Or perhaps you might find Opabinia, a small animal with 5 eyes and a long flexible nozzle. These were the Earth's early wondrous experiments with life. They lived in a world where there were no trees, no birds, and no dinosaurs, just the rhythmic swaying of the tides and the quiet struggle to exist in the deep. There is a profound sense of peace in this deep time perspective. When we think of 500 million years, the worries of a single day seem to soften and fade away. We are part of a lineage of life that is incredibly resilient, a thread of existence that has survived 5 mass extinctions and the shifting of entire continents. The very stone that forms the backbone of the Canadian Rockies was once a soft, sun-drenched seabed teeming with movement. It reminds us that everything is in a constant, slow state of becoming. As we leave these ancient stony records behind, we begin to descend from the high, dry altitudes of the interior. The air starts to change, becoming heavier, cooler, and filled with the scent of cedar and salt. The jagged gray of the mountains gives way to a deep emerald blanket that stretches as far as the eye can see. We are moving toward the coast, toward a place where the ancient history of the land meets the vibrant, living pulse of the present. We are entering the Great Bear Rainforest, a sanctuary of mist and shadow where the trees themselves seem to hold the breath of the world. As the mist curls through the ancient boughs, we find ourselves deep within the Great Bear Rainforest. This is a place of profound silence. Tucked away along the rugged north and central coast of British Columbia, stretching across more than 6 million hectares, it is one of the largest remaining tracts of coastal temperate rainforest on our planet. Unlike the tropical rainforest of the equator, this is a world defined by cool, damp air, towering evergreens, and a pace of life that feels measured in centuries rather than years. The air here is heavy and sweet, saturated with the scent of western red cedar, Sitka spruce, and hemlock. These trees are the elders of the landscape, some reaching heights of nearly 300 feet and living for over 1,000 years. Their branches are draped in long, flowing curtains of pale green lichen, which sway gently in the breeze like the beard of an old man. Below, the forest floor is a deep sponge-like bed of moss that muffles every sound, creating a natural sanctuary where even the loudest storm feels like a distant whisper. In this place, the earth is soft underfoot, and the world feels padded in velvet. Deep within these emerald shadows lives a creature of both myth and remarkable science. The Kermode bear, often called the spirit bear. While it belongs to the species of the American black bear, a small percentage of bears in certain parts of this region are born with a coat as white as fresh snow. This is not albinism, nor is it a relative of the polar bear. It is the result of a rare recessive gene, a hidden piece of genetic code that manifests in this specific, secluded environment. To see a white bear moving through the deep green ferns is a sight of ethereal beauty, a literal ghost in the forest. Scientific observation has revealed a fascinating advantage to this unique coloration. During the day, the white fur makes the bear less visible to the salmon swimming in the streams below. Against the bright glare of the sky, the fish cannot see the predator coming as easily as they would a dark furred bear, allowing the spirit bear to be an incredibly efficient hunter. This connection between the sea and the forest is the heartbeat of the Great Bear Rainforest. Every year, millions of salmon return from the Pacific Ocean to these freshwater streams to spawn. As they are caught by bears, wolves, and eagles, their remains are left on the forest floor, providing a vital source of nitrogen that fuels the growth of the massive trees. It is a perfect closed-loop system, the ocean feeding the forest and the forest, in turn, protecting the coast. Scientists have even found marine nitrogen in the very tops of the oldest cedars, a testament to how the sea literally flows through the veins of the trees. As you imagine yourself standing on a moss-covered bank, listening to the gentle rush of a stream and the rhythmic drip of rainwater from a cedar branch, you can feel the immense peace of this green world. It is a place of refuge, a stronghold of nature that has remained largely unchanged for millennia. The Great Bear Rainforest is a reminder of the Earth's capacity for endurance and quiet, interconnected life. But as we follow the coast further north, the lush greens begin to soften. The air grows colder, losing its damp weight and becoming crisp and sharp. The emerald canopy thins, revealing a landscape where the earth is draped in a different kind of blanket. We are leaving the world of rain and entering the realm of ice and snow, where the silence is even deeper and the light takes on a brilliant, crystalline glow. We are moving toward the high, frozen peaks of the north, where the very structure of water transforms into a work of art. As the temperature drops and the air grows thin, the very physics of the world begins to change. Water, which we have followed through rushing rivers and misting waterfalls, starts to arrange itself into rigid, beautiful structures. This is the realm of the frozen, a landscape defined by the quiet strength of ice and the soft, insulating embrace of snow. In the far reaches of the Yukon and British Columbia, within the towering St. Elias Mountains, lies a site of prehistoric majesty. This region is home to the world's largest non-polar ice fields. Here, the ice is so thick and so vast that it creates its own weather, a high-altitude sea of white that has remained frozen for thousands of years. To look upon these ice fields is to look back in time, seeing the world as it was during the great glacial ages, a silent witness to the slow, patient grinding of stone against ice. But there is a smaller, more delicate science at work here as well. Every winter, trillions of individual masterpieces fall from the Canadian sky. There's a birth of a snowflake is a lesson in symmetry and grace. It begins as a microscopic speck of dust or pollen floating high in a cloud. As water vapor begins to freeze onto this tiny seed, it naturally forms a hexagonal prism, a six-sided shape dictated by the very molecular bond of water itself. As the crystal falls through different layers of temperature and humidity, branches sprout from the corners of the hexagon, creating the intricate, lace-like patterns we recognize. Because every flake follows a slightly different path to the ground, experiencing its own unique journey through the atmosphere, no two are ever quite the same. It is a quiet individual history written in ice, falling softly into the deep drifts below. When these flakes pile up, they create one of nature's most effective insulators. You might think of snow as cold, but for the earth, it is a warm, protective blanket. Because snow is composed of up to 90% trapped air, it acts much like the feathers of a bird or the wool of a sweater. It prevents the warmth of the soil from escaping into the freezing air above. In the space between the ground and the bottom of the snowpack, a hidden world called the subniven zone, the temperature remains remarkably constant, often hovering just around the freezing mark even when the air above is 30 degrees colder. Here, small creatures like voles and shrews go about their lives in safety, protected from the wind and the predators by a roof of crystalline white. This insulating quality extends to the very sound of the world. Have you ever noticed how quiet it becomes during a heavy snowfall? Fresh, porous snow is an incredible acoustic absorber. It catches sound waves in the tiny spaces between the crystals, preventing them from bouncing back. The world becomes muffled, hushed, and private, as if the landscape itself is holding its breath. It is a natural lullaby, a silencing of the modern world that invites a deep restorative stillness. In this quiet, white-draped land, the cold is not something to be feared, but something to be understood and respected. For the people who live in these northern reaches, the snow is not an obstacle to be cleared, but a new kind of terrain to be explored. The arrival of winter does not mean the end of movement. Rather, it marks the beginning of a different way of traveling across the vast, silent stretches of the true north. For a long time, the deep snows of the Canadian winter were a beautiful but formidable barrier. If you lived in a remote village in the 1920s, a heavy blizzard meant your world became very small, very quickly. Travel was limited to the slow pace of a dog sled or the rhythmic, heavy step of a person on snowshoes. But in the quiet town of Valcourt, Quebec, a young inventor named Joseph Armand Bombardier looked at the white drifts and saw a different possibility. He didn't see an obstacle. He saw a highway that simply hadn't been mapped yet. In 1937, after years of experimentation and a deep desire to help his community stay connected during the harshest months, Bombardier patented the first commercial snowmobile, the B7. It was a marvel of simple, effective physics. By using a wide, flexible track and skis, the vehicle distributed its weight so perfectly that it could skim across the surface of the snow rather than sinking into it. It was, in essence, a motorized snowshoe, exerting less pressure on the ground than a person's foot. Think of the relief and the sense of connection this brought to the northern landscape. Before these machines, a winter emergency in a rural area was a terrifying prospect, as the roads were often impassable for months. But with the B7 and later the larger B12, doctors could reach patients, and mail could be delivered to the most isolated cabins tucked deep within the woods. It turned the long sleep of a winter into a season of movement and safety. Eventually, in 1959, this technology was miniaturized into the first personal snowmobile, the Ski-Doo, which allowed individuals to explore the deep, silent woods with an ease never before imagined. There is a gentle beauty in this kind of innovation. It is human ingenuity working in harmony with the environment rather than trying to conquer it. Instead of waiting for the sun to melt the snow or for heavy machinery to clear it away, we learned to float above it. Imagine being out on a trail in the late afternoon, the sun low and golden against the long blue shadows of the spruce trees. There is a rhythmic, steady hum to the journey, a sound that eventually fades into the background of your mind, leaving you alone with the crisp air and the scent of frozen pine. You are moving through a landscape that feels infinite, a part of the true north that defines so much of the Canadian identity. You can see the tracks stretching out behind you, a temporary signature on the white landscape that will be gently erased by the next snowfall. It is a reminder of our fleeting presence in such a vast land. This spirit of navigating the wild, of respecting the power and the stillness of the northern climate, is what led to a deeper national desire to protect these places. This phrase, the true north, is more than just a line in an anthem. It represents a collective reverence for the rugged, untouched parts of the world. It is the realization that while we have the tools to traverse the wilderness, there is an even greater value in leaving some of it exactly as we found it. This impulse to protect the quiet, to preserve the ancient trees and the clear mountain air, led to the creation of a vast network of sanctuaries. As the hum of the engine fades and we step off the path, we enter a realm where time moves differently. The world of the national parks, where the land is held in a sacred, silent trust for all who seek its peace. As we leave the humming engines behind and step softly onto the forest floor, we enter a realm where time seems to slow to the pace of a growing tree. This is the world of the national parks, a legacy of protection and a sacred, silent trust that ensures the most beautiful corners of this vast land remain exactly as they were meant to be. There is a profound peace in the concept of a sanctuary, a place where the land is not a resource to be used, but a masterpiece to be admired, and a home for the wild things that have lived here for millennia. This journey of preservation began in the year 1885, high in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. It started with the discovery of bubbling, mineral-rich hot springs on the slopes of Sulphur Mountain. While some saw an opportunity for commercial gain, a different, more visionary idea took root, the idea that this place belonged to everyone and to no one all at once. This became Banff, Canada's first national park. At the time, the world was rapidly changing, moving toward industry and speed, yet here was a designated space where the mountains could simply be mountains, and the valleys could remain draped in their ancient emerald silence. The philosophy of preservation is a gentle one. It is the practice of looking at a pristine landscape, a turquoise lake reflecting a jagged peak, or a dense grove of cedar trees, and deciding that its greatest value lies in its stillness. It is the act of keeping the wilderness wild so that future generations, years and decades from now, can find the same solace and wonder that we do today. These parks are places where we can go to dream, where the air is clean, and the only sounds are the rhythmic sigh of the wind through the needles and the distant melodic trickle of a glacial stream. There are now dozens of these sanctuaries scattered across the country, from the fog-drenched coasts of the Atlantic to the towering ice-capped giants of the Pacific. They cover millions of acres, acting as a green lung for the planet and a refuge for the soul. In these spaces, the true north is not just a direction, but a state of being. It is a commitment to stewardship, a promise that we will act as guardians of the quiet. As you settle deeper into your pillows, let the reassurance of these places wash over you. There is something deeply comforting in the knowledge that even as the world around us remains busy and loud, these vast tracts of land are lying in perfect, undisturbed peace. Right now, in the deep of the night, the stars are wheeling over the silent peaks of Banff. The elk are moving like shadows through the meadows of Jasper, and the ancient trees of Pacific Rim are drinking in the cool, salt-misted air. These quiet places will always exist. They are a permanent fixture of the landscape, a mental safety net where you can always return in your thoughts when you need to find stillness. You don't have to be there to feel their influence. Simply knowing they are there, breathing and surviving in their natural state, is enough to ground the mind. The land is being held for you, kept safe and sacred, a timeless landscape that asks nothing of you but your presence and your rest. We are beginning to feel that same stillness now within ourselves. The vastness of the geography we have explored has led us to this point of ultimate sanctuary. The mountains are steady, the forests are protective, and the lakes are mirrors of calm. The journey across this great quiet land is reaching its natural conclusion, drawing us toward a final, restful state. The geography of the earth is mirrored now by the geography of your own mind, wide, peaceful, and ready to drift into the softest of shadows. We are preparing now for the final rest, a slow and gentle descent into the deep, restorative sleep that the quiet of the north provides. As our journey through the vast, quiet landscapes of Canada draws to a close, take a moment to visualize the map of this great land one last time. From this high, mental vantage point, the country resembles a sleeping giant draped in a blanket of snow, forest, and ancient stone. It is a land that breathes with the rhythm of the tides and the slow seasonal pulse of the wilderness. There is a profound sense of permanence here, a feeling that these mountains and plains have seen eons pass and will see many more, remaining steadfast and silent through it all. Inscribed upon the nation's coat of arms is the Latin motto, Amare usque ad mare, which translates simply to from sea to sea. It is a phrase that captures the sheer, staggering breadth of the geography we have traversed together. It speaks of a horizon that stretches from the rugged, salt-sprayed cliffs of Newfoundland on the Atlantic across the heart of the continent to the mist-shrouded fjords of British Columbia on the Pacific. And even further, it reaches upward to the frozen, silent beauty of the Arctic shore. This motto is a reminder of the scale of the world, a scale so large that our own worries seem to shrink and fade into the distance, leaving only the peace of the open road and the quiet sky. Take a long, slow breath in now, feeling the cool, imaginary air of the boreal forest filling your lungs. As you exhale, let go of the day just as the sun sets over the Yukon, turning the snow to shades of lavender and deep blue. Reflect for a moment on the path we have taken. We began with the ancient foundation of the Canadian Shield, rocks that have held the weight of the world for 4 billion years, providing us with a sense of grounded stability. We moved through the million lakes of the interior, those silver mirrors reflecting a sky that never ends. We felt the spray of Niagara and the thunder of the Bay of Fundy, reminding us of the rhythmic, predictable power of nature's cycles. We watched the industrious beaver and the solitary moose move through their domains with quiet purpose, and we looked up in awe as the aurora borealis painted the heavens in ribbons of emerald and violet. We walked through the deep history of the First Nations and the early explorers, seeing how the human story is woven into the very fabric of the earth. From the discovery of life-saving medicine to the mechanical grace of the canadarm reaching into the stars, we have seen how this land fosters both deep roots and soaring dreams. Now, all those images begin to soften and blur at the edges, like a forest fading into a gentle evening mist. The great sleeping giant of the north is at rest, and you are invited to join that silence. The true north is no longer a place on a map, but a feeling of absolute stillness within your own mind. The air is still. The waters are calm. The stars are watching over the peaks and the prairies, casting a soft, protective light over everything below. You are safe. You are grounded. You are part of this vast, beautiful continuity. The journey is complete, and the land has shared its secrets of endurance and peace with you. There is nothing left to do but drift. Feel the weight of your body sinking into the mattress, as heavy and settled as a mountain, and as relaxed as a calm lake at dawn. The world is quiet now. The great expanse of the north is hushed, waiting for the morning, but for now, it simply exists in the dark, cool embrace of the night. Sleep now, surrounded by the memory of ancient stones and dancing lights. Let the vastness of the horizon carry you into a deep, restorative slumber. May your dreams be as wide as the prairies and as peaceful as the deepest woods. Rest well, rest deeply. Good night.